How's it going, everyone? We mentioned how we're doing predictions all week leading up to the spring major, and we've got another one for you guys today. It's Moist Esports versus Envy, and without wasting any time, let's get straight into it. First up, let's talk about Moist Esports. We're going to talk and break down strengths and weaknesses. Then we're going to talk about Envy, their first matchup, and at the end, then provide my verdict on who I think is going to win. I know last time a lot of you were like, hey, I didn't expect to watch 15 minutes, and then for you to be like, maybe on a team. Trust me, in time, we're going to give some more detailed opinions on these. That last one was just really tough. So, Moist Esports, let's talk about their strengths first, because there is quite a few of them. Obviously, this is a team that has been the top dogs. Previous team, Queso, did second place at the Winter Split Major, and since then has been in conversation of top 3 every single time since. Very talented roster, and congrats to them getting picked up by Moist Esports. As for their strengths, we're going to start off with the most obvious one, their individual capabilities. Obviously, this team, from start to finish, everybody is capable of pulling something out of nowhere. A lot of the time with their offense, this provides a large margin of error. There may be a pass that's not quite perfect, or something that the ball just kind of trickles up and we don't know who's going to go for it, but it doesn't seem to be a difficulty. Because they are so mechanically gifted, any player, whether it be Rise, Joyo, or Vatira, can go up and make something happen out of nothing. Whether it be a weird bounce or pinch, or something that they intentionally do, it does not seem to make a difference, as the player's margin of error does not seem to matter. So, insane individual ability provides them a lot of opportunities. You're going to see this from a lot of teams at the high level, your phases, etc. On the other side of things, their defense is quite malleable. A lot of the times, this is paired with their structure. Primarily on offense, a lot of the times with Team Queso, now Moist, the fakes have been very prevalent in the way that they go about their play style. A lot of times there will be a player who is on the ball and their whole purpose is to actually not hit it. They will call for a fake, do some flashy stuff around it, try to get the defense to bite. And because of that, not only do they draw the defender, but they have someone behind who gets a free aerial if no one does bite. We've seen teams start to recognize that, and so has Moist with the adjustments they're making, whether they force a 50 or they just do back-to-back fakes. A lot of this is communicated, and what they do with their structure is leave a player super far back on defense. They commit to and allow 2 players to basically 2v3 the defense and then leave a deep third. And they only come in if they have to. And if they don't, they have the ability to clear it right back into the other side and the offense continues. So their offense is a specific kind of pressure with their fakes. You can take their offense in general and make that as one of their strengths as well, because their offense does have a lot of exciting things about it. While they may not always pass, the individual mechanics and everything that kind of ties together on the offense makes them very threatening. But they then pair that with a really solid deep third man, like I mentioned, in order to sustain that offense. And then you have to be wary of, is it a pass infield? Is it a solo play? Is it just a pass off the backboard? Is it a fake? What is it? And they just keep throwing all these different types of styles at you. And eventually it usually leads to a goal. They will put on a ton of offense, but they don't necessarily need it to be a ton of shots. They're pretty efficient on offense. Deadly when they have the ball for sure. Last but not least, they are reliable. Every single one of their players, and I talk about that deep third, this is kind of where this stems from. The reliability on every single player on the team, that if they are in a bad situation, offense or defense, can buy time or bail them out of a really tough circumstance. The amount of times that I've seen Queso, now Moist, in a really tough spot on defense, where a player just pulls something out of nowhere, turns it into a complete air dribble, or they hit that perfect touch cross field, whatever it may be. Every single one of these players is someone that you can count on. Every single one of these players has full trust in their teammates. And if they didn't, you would see a lot of double commits and things falling off. Last but not least, something that I don't think is touched on too much has to be their communication. This is something that me and Eclipse talked briefly on, but it's something that I want to advocate heavily for. You are not able to make these things happen unless you have a good communication throughout your teammates. If the chemistry and the organization isn't there, if you are not articulating, I'm faking this preemptively, like having the vision of the game to say, I'm going to do this thing, and let the teammates respect that, still in rotation, still clean. It doesn't ever feel like there's hesitation or slowing down or stuttering in their decisions. It's very fluid in the way they play, and a lot of that is due to their communication, in my opinion. Now, on the other side, if we're talking about Moist weakness, this is something that we get a little bit nitpicky, and we don't want to go too much into it. Again, when talking with these coaches, they don't want to give away all their strategies, and I do appreciate Eclipse taking the time to sit and talk for like 2 hours on this stuff. But they do struggle and tend to have a lack of team play. Now, a lot of the times I do say they have the ability to go infield passing, but most time, like 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be an individual play, a shot, or if it is a shot that does get saved or goes off the backboard, then is another shot that follows up. Very rarely is there intentional team plays downfield, unless it comes from like an immediate counterattack. It doesn't seem to be that the first decision is I'm going to go for this air dribble and pass that infield, or I'm going to take it from the sidewall and pass it infield, or corner and in. It is primarily we have control of the ball. We are going to stay on top of it, which does allow them to keep a lot of 50s. And if teams recognize that stuff, it can be punished. If you know a player is going to be going for those types of things, or they are going to keep it close, you don't have to worry about committing too heavily because they're not going to just pass it around you. Not to say that they don't have the spatial awareness to go for passes, but most of the time it is going to be intentional of them lacking that team play style of things. Eclipse was one to point this out, and watching the matches back, this does become pretty apparent. Now, because they go for a lot of these solo plays, as mentioned, midfield challenges can shut them down pretty readily. I talk about being able to describe how to break down this offense, and a lot of it is you have to stop it from developing in the first place. The first time we saw this over in North America was Space Station, who really took charge with challenging these teams that wanted to play super aggressively, and then having another person that follows in suit right away. First person, it's a challenge, creates a 50-50, that ball drops down, you have another teammate there immediately to pick up possession again. Challenging the midfield while they have that space, and this is something that's actually difficult against Moist, but it is a way to shut it down. Like, there is a, hey, do this, and it's a way to stop it. The difficulty comes from, hey, they create space pretty well, but if you are able to play fast, secure your own boost and stuff, because Moist does require taking a lot of boost in order for this playstyle to work. If you're able to meet them in the midfield and challenge them there, that will shut it down. And those initial pressures where, hey, we're going to go for this air dribble, and now it's dropping down in front of your net, is now dropping down in front of midfield, and these things become less threatening. Reason why they are so threatening is because they are air dribbling it right above your net. It drops down. Those shots have a chance to go in. But if you're doing that in the midfield, not so much. So if they do shut down and get shut down in their own half, they tend to crumble a little bit. Because they do need that boost, and sometimes those 100 boost pads in the middle aren't as readily available as a clean rotation on offense and taking the corners, because the other players have to take that extra chance or that second shot that comes in to make a save rather than securing the boost or getting back on defense. So if you can meet them in the midfield, if you can stop that pressure initially rather than it being on your own half and then allowing them to sustain it, a little bit better off. A lot of ways teams have been stopping this too is on rotation with their third person. After the first person challenges in the midfield, rather than just rotating back in line, they'll look for a bumper demo so that next player up doesn't necessarily come in. And a big weakness for them, and it's something that Eclipse talked about and something that he's noticed firsthand, if they can't score, if they're putting on a lot of pressure and they just can't seem to find goals. Eclipse, obviously on endpoint, one of the best defenses in the league. We'll talk about them much later on in our prediction videos. But their ability to score is something that they rely heavily on. I talk about that efficiency. If that does not happen, they can get pretty frustrated. The frustration isn't more so like visible in the mentality. It's more so in their decision making. Because they are so efficient on offense, when that's not met, all of a sudden they start going for things. They're trying to force things that they necessarily shouldn't, rather than being like, hey, this will come eventually. You know, we've got the offense, we're sustaining, we're denying the boost. Eventually we will find a goal. Instead, they try to force that extra touch, or they put themselves a little bit out of position or get a little bit too aggressive, and then counterattacks happen and they get punished. So if you can shut them down with really solid defense, whether it be midfield or otherwise, they start forcing things, and those can be punished. Sometimes they're rewarded for it because of that margin of error with their offense, but most teams, if they're ready for it, can shut it down. On the other side, we're going to be talking about Envy, and this presents the question. Obviously, Moist offense, a lot of focus on Envy. Their biggest strength is got to be their defense. And this has been pretty much any team Turbo's on, even though he is no longer. This is something that I will talk about more so in the weaknesses, but right now there are some situations going on with Envy due to Drees having COVID. I'll explain that more in a bit here. But when it comes to their strengths, talking and focusing is they are very difficult to score on. They like to pack the box. They do not commit on defense. There's a lot of times when shots come in, players like Mist in particular just won't challenge you. They will invite you in. And because that is their structure and they invite teams in, they have multiple with boost ready to make a save and then bring it back the other way. They will force you to get over aggressive. They will force you to make decisions, and then out of nowhere, all of a sudden it goes the other way and you're scored on. And it's really, really frustrating. Mist can be in comparison to almost Monkey Moon at times when it comes to the sense of positioning on defense. That is from Chrome, and talks about the efforts of Mist on defense. He will not challenge you. He will wait and pre-jump you and make sure that that angle you're going for is cut off. The nice thing, though, is when you're on offense, you're controlling the pace. Flip resets, stuff like that to get around him are possible. But if he accomplishes you having to go around him, that means he's expended your option, and it is up to his then next in line whether it be Drees or Illusion, to make the save. So he has done his job. So Mist is kind of the frustrating part of this defense. He's one of their biggest strengths, but it is primarily to set up the fact that their defense is very, very solid. They also then pair that with a really good counterattack. A lot of times it is after the defense, because their structure is built around it. They do find a really good job of alleviating that pressure with a counterattack very quickly downfield with an indirect or a direct pass. Sometimes it just pinches awkwardly, whatever it may be, or they play it into midfield and all of a sudden you go for a shot, you get dunked, and it ends in the back of your net. I've seen it way too many times to teams. The one thing with them, and because they are focusing on new play styles and they're having to bounce between two players, it is actually a pretty big strength that no one really has a read on them. They don't know what to plan for on offense. Talking with Chrome, he says they're really hard to prep for just because they don't really have a read on what their offense wants to do, which can also be a negative, which we'll talk about in a second here. Primarily, every time they go to game plan for them, they know what they're going to do on defense, but when it comes to offense, they can just flip a switch. Sometimes they're playing super defensive, and then out of nowhere, all of a sudden, they're going super aggressive. They're challenging everything. They're hitting as many solo plays as possible. They're passing like crazy, and they just turn it on at random. There's no real decisiveness or game plan, it feels like, when they do that, and a lot of that is because they're trying to identify what this playstyle is with the new player. Ever since they lost to Atomic, it's felt kind of weird, and they've been in this weird area. While they are looking better with Illusion results-wise, it is very similar still with Turbo having to do fill-in. It just feels a little bit worse than what it is with Drees on the team. So a lot of it is just tough to read, and I think once teams figure it out or have an idea of how to do it, we've seen version 1 really pick them apart in previous matches as well during this last regional and the regional before, but primarily they're just kind of an anomaly on offense, which can be good and can be bad. We'll talk about the bad here in a sec. Last but not least, they are very consistent. They are also reliable in their play. They do not lose to teams below them. The difficulty that I have with that is while they are reliable, they're not playing teams below them. They're playing the other best teams in the world. So let's talk about their weaknesses. Primarily, I talked about it at the very beginning. Right now, Drees is dealing with COVID. He is feeling better since the last we heard. He's still got to get tested, make sure everything's are good. So right now, they are practicing and scrimming in the UK with Turbo. And if Drees shows up, they're not going to have much practice with Drees, which does make a difference. And it's going to be kind of this awkwardness. Well, I do think they'll be better with Drees. It is still not ideal situations for them. So even if Drees does make it, they haven't practiced with him. So that could be some problems. On the other side of things, they don't really have a structure other than the defensive half. When it comes into offense and everything else, it becomes a problem. If teams don't just fall for the fact that, hey, we're going to play defense, because they are playing so much defense, they give you a ton of space. And if you use that space to open up the field and go for cross-field passes, you're sitting still, it's going to be a goal. Maybe you want to send somebody to demo instead while you hold on to possession. Or we just wait in the midfield and force you to come challenge us. A lot of these things are an easy way to pick apart their defense and is stuff that they will struggle and have a hard time adjusting to. Secret and Envy have some similarities in that. And if you just don't challenge the ball, it gives you a lot of space to work with. If the ball goes up in the air and you just sit and watch, Envy goes, oh crap, we have to go. It's in front of our net. And then it forces them out automatically, and it's an easy way to punish it. So you can kind of beat them at their own game, and it might be a problem. But the biggest issue, they do lack an offense. They have moments where they look really good doing it. But it is pretty random and pretty chaotic. And when you're under pressure, you default back to what your routine is, which is defense. So Envy is pretty exploitable, and it could be a problem. So as for your verdict, what do we got? We got Moist, obviously a ton of offense, a lot of creativity, big margin of error, tons of offense. And on Envy, reliable, but also very defensive heavy. Beatable, though. If you know what you're doing, you know how to beat it. This one, I think, is probably one of the easier predictions I have. I think Moist, obviously, is a pretty dang good team and is staying towards the top. While Envy, not only are they dealing with the issue of, are they even playing with all their starters? Maybe Turbo Super Sub does it again like he did with Gale Force. But I'm not one to bet on that. I do, and I think I easily pick Moist on this one. I don't know how many people that have Envy playing this as an upset. It is possible where the defense, because Moist can start a little bit slow. We saw that at Winter as well against version 1 and others, but I very firmly believe that Moist should be fine in this, especially with a little bit of experience under their belt. These teams aren't going to be playing in front of a stage. They do still have to warm up. And with that said, I do think Envy can surprise and maybe take Game 1, but after that, I think Moist is going to get into the groove of things. They should win this one, in my opinion, 3-1. I have Moist taking the first series and going on to play the winner of V1 and Endpoint. If you guys enjoy this type of content, you like these detailed breakdowns and stuff, don't worry, we're going to be doing them all week long. Appreciate your comments on the last one and stuff, and hopefully you're getting some stuff and some things to pay attention to while these matches go down. on Wednesday. But as I mentioned, we're going to be doing these every single day, all the way up until the first match on Wednesday. If you enjoy this type of content, as always, it is greatly appreciated. If you could leave some comments down below. Who do you guys have winning? Always appreciative of knowing that stuff. Also, while you're down there, if you enjoy this type of content, consider giving it a thumbs up, hitting subscribe, and turning on notifications, as it does help me out greatly. But tomorrow, another prediction video coming at you, and we hope to see you there. Peace.